Welcome everyone to Almost Cancelled. I am Peter, that is Connor, and this is our TV news edition. And it's actually just been over 2 weeks since the last episode, which is why we're kind of making a point of doing it now, because the amount that is piling up is ballooning. And if we leave it any longer, if we leave it till the next time we normally do it in the week, it'll be far too much. So we're doing it today. I have 35 tabs open.
What's an average amount?
But half that.
Right, okay. I'm glad I made the coffee now.
I don't know. I know what it looks like, but all I see, because I use Deadline for the articles, typically this is something that pops up somewhere else.
It's just their logo.
It's just the D from Deadline across the tabs at the top, just across as far as the eye can see. But yeah, we got, show orders, renewals, pilots, things in development, all that sort of stuff from the past 2 weeks. And we'll dive into it. So that's what's coming up. Before we get going though, just this past weekend, the first half of the results of the top 50 TV shows of all time did go up. On Sunday there was a premiere. People were chatting along as they were watching live, but then it was obviously still up after. The second half, which is the top 25 of that, it'll be up this coming Sunday. So look forward to that. But anyway. So, without further ado, let's dive into the news. First up, headlining here before we get to the usual structure. It felt big enough that I should probably put this Harry Potter show in development at the front of the news, even though
it's nothing even remotely official yet, right? It's kind of just, well, maybe.
I need a headline, and Harry Potter TV show in development is headliney.
It's you're succumbing to the clickbaitness. I get it.
It's not clickbait. I mean, it's news.
It is, but artificially going, well, that'll get the clicks. That would be a headline.
Like, I'm not linking Bleeding Cool here. I'm not taking news from some dodgy source. I'm taking this from Deadline. All right, there's at least a level of insider knowledge to this. I mean, this is not a surprise. Honestly, this is a thing where, on the one hand, I'm surprised it wasn't already kind of brought up ages ago. On the other hand, I'm a little. I don't think Warner Bros. With HBO Max are being as bad yet at this, but it does kind of make me sort of go, just in the same way that Disney keep rebooting and sequelizing and bringing things back for all their projects for Disney Plus. So
I get it.
Yeah.
It's hard to be annoyed by it because it's one, as far as we know right now, it's one TV show in a universe that's not that huge in terms of on screen. It doesn't feel like overload yet, but I mean brand reliance, sure.
Yeah, brand reliance. It's kind of where you draw the line, I suppose. I mean, in this case, at least they're not bringing some weird thing back from 30 years ago. I mean, one would argue. I mean, the main thing had 8 movies. Like, most people would say that's plenty for any franchise. Like, 8 movies is more than you ever really need to ask for. And you can live with just that. But it's kind of funny just in the dawn of the sequel franchise, which is, Fantastic Beasts, which is in a really weird place right now because everyone kind of hated the second one. One
technically is a prequel franchise.
Prequel, whatever. You know what I mean? I mean sequel franchise in the sense that it is the next step
know what you
of
meant,
them making money off the cash cow. Everyone's in a weird place. They don't really know what they're doing with the third one, even though they're supposed to be 5 or 6.
I think they were planned 5, but who knows?
And planned is kind of weird in that case because I mean it's planned in that J.K. Rowling agreed to do that many, but I don't know if she actually mapped them out or how many of them she's actually written or given that much serious thought to. So who knows? So I mean, there's no concept yet. There's no is this a prequel? Is it a sequel? Is it Harry Potter the Next Generation? Therefore you can't really call it Harry Potter because it's not Harry Potter, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, I mean it might not have Harry Potter in the title.
Yes.
I think it's such a ubiquitous brand at this point that you don't need it.
Yeah, I don't think you could just call it anything. I think Fantastic Beasts was a bit of almost a hard sell on its own. Obviously, they made sure everyone knew what it was because they played the main music and they constantly put from the Wizarding World of Harry Potter and stuff like that in the trailers. I think the few things you could call it or put in the title to make it very clear. I think the word Hogwarts is well known enough that would sell it on its name.
You just hit on a phrase I was about to touch on there is, Wizarding World. I think that's probably enough for a lot of people to think of Harry Potter.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'm not Harry Potter. Yeah, I don't really care about any of this.
I mean,
so.
I'm not like massively excited for this, obviously, yet. There's no details. There's nothing to really be excited about. I do think, we've had movies. I think a TV show could be perfectly good, right? There's no reason why not. It's a pretty expansive universe for them to play with. There's all sorts of things this could be. There's no even point in speculating what it will be. But there are plenty of things this could be, and that's fine. I've not really got a problem with them having, a TV show. And like I say, because it never really went away, there was only a handful of years between the last movie and then Fantastic Beasts. It just feels like a concurrently running, franchise. It doesn't feel like it's stopped and then they're bringing it back. This just feels like, it's the next bit.
Yeah, but to be fair, I think the only reason why it worked this way with this one is because pop culture and Hollywood had already gotten to a point by the time Harry Potter finished where we
need more.
They're not going to sit in this to wait to bring it back. The period now if something's a hit in the level that Harry Potter was, we don't wait anymore. We just, okay, you'll get a couple of years while we make the next movie, but that's it. It's back. It's back as something else. Simply rebranded.
And that's a separate complaint, though, I think, in this case, because it hit in that point where it just continued running. It doesn't feel like they're just reviving and it's just for the sake of it. It's like, of course there's more Harry Potter. Why wouldn't there be?
Yes. I mean, I would argue not everything. I would argue that most things should not just continue in perpetuity. But hey,
I agree.
We're here. There's going to be more Harry Potter. I'm not going to watch it. I'll make that very clear right now because I just do not give a shit.
You're not going to watch the first episode and see how much you hate it.
I mean, if I'm feeling adventurous, maybe we'll do the pilot. But
I sent a Patreon pilot vote.
It's not my. I don't hate Harry Potter. It's not like there's enough elements of things that I do like, kind of mixed in with it, that it's not like a torturous experience. The thought of like actually watching all 8 movies again is like, oh god, no, please, I'm fine.
Like I say, you're open to some elements of it. There's probably a TV show concept out there that you could enjoy. Like it depends on what they do for sure, but there's probably something out there that you'd enjoy.
I think the principle for me here is that to not fall into the trap of Star Wars, I would say that this, because Fantastic Beasts is kind of separate, but there's still a lot of things to connect it in the sense that, there's a lot of references to Dumbledore. I think Dumbledore's even in the second movie, right? I didn't see the second one.
Yes.
But yeah. But, there's references to something, there's some sort of like core thing that they're trying to like connect it to with characters from Harry Potter, the younger selves and blah, blah. This really should just be something so far removed that we're not talking, I mean, maybe Hogwarts exists, but they should not be talking about Dumbledore. They should not be...
I think the best you could do is, I mean, if you're doing a next generation style thing, you could have some of the ex characters, like the ex students be maybe, one of them's a teacher now.
Sure.
You can have things like, well, Harry's still a famous celebrity, and not that there's appearances, I'm not saying that. I mean, maybe there's like the odd, as like in universe, he's like a guest speaker, or something. That's possible, but not like he's not going to be there all the time. There's not going to be all this constantly tying in. I don't think it shouldn't be anyway.
I don't think Danny Radman would want to be there anyway to appear constantly.
I've seen the films he does. I think he'll take the paycheck.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's still progression at least. Whereas now things are obsessed with not progressing. Just like a Star Trek, how like everything has to be a prequel or set around the original series, and
no, I get it. I honestly think the slightly in the future is more likely in this instance because one year you had that epilogue at the end of the film and the book that did jump ahead like 17 years or whatever it was. That was a snapshot of, okay, you've got the kids there. You could literally just do a series following Harry's kids if you really wanted, and it would make sense. And also, I think it's been enough time that you could have some of those actors come back, and they're more or less, they'll line up kind of where you want them to, with fudging it a little bit, but close enough that I think that's probably more appealing to them than doing something set, around the exact time.
Plus, they live at the schools, so you can kind of get away with not having the parents be there at all if you really need to. If not, one or two special appearances at the beginning and end if you have to do it. But there you go. Okay, so there's a Harry Potter thing, TV show probably happen, and even if this one falls through, another one will probably happen at some point.
Like you say, this has an air of inevitability to it, doesn't
That's
it?
it.
How have they not done it already?
That's it. There's enough of a stink around J.K. Rowling right now for other reasons that maybe they'll be even persuaded or inclined to wait a little bit than they maybe otherwise would have.
No, they just will have absolutely no involvement from her with it.
I mean, that's fair, but I mean, some people just don't want to support the because she still earns royalties no matter what, how involved she is in it. So some people just don't want to support her in any way, shape, or form right now. So
I absolutely get that. It's just how much does that of that outcome do Warner Bros. Think that will affect their bottom line?
It's funnier. It's funnier with the video game though, because the video game's been in development for like 6 or 7 years. So there's no stopping the train at this point on that, and like all these people working on it for years are faced with this kind of weird controversy that's sprung up around it, which is not directly related to Harry Potter itself, but
it's just she turned out to be a really shitty person.
But everyone's feeling weird about it because they don't want to support her anymore. So, and I say everyone, I'm generally
reasonable
speaking,
people.
Yes. So I'm sure there's enough people who don't even know what's going on. I'm sure there's plenty of kids and plenty of parents of kids who have no idea that any controversy exists, and it'll still make enough money that Warner Brothers won't be hurt by it too much. But
yeah, we are very much in the in that circle of knowing these things, and I think it is important to remember that that's so even Twitter and social media in general like that, it's a pretty small social circle at the end of the day. It just seems big because it's global, but the actual percentage it isn't that huge.
All right, a little bit about other things then. CW have renewed a bunch of shows.
I think it was like 14 or something like that.
For next season. So here's the list that they have renewed as of right now. They have renewed Walker, which is the Walker Texas Ranger reboot with Jared from Supernatural.
Oh yeah.
Yes. You got that. You got All American, which is their American football show that they have for a couple of years. Batwoman got renewed for season 3. Charm got renewed. Legends of Tomorrow got renewed for was that must be season 6 that's been renewed for then.
7, I think.
7? Oh yeah, was it 6? It's just coming on.
So yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's 7 again.
There's one behind the Flash, isn't it?
I think is it not 2 behind? No. Maybe 2 behind the Flash. But then Flash is probably going to get season 8 though. So I don't know. You can. Yeah. I've lost track. We stopped watching them, so I've lost track. Dynasty got renewed. The Flash got renewed for, I presume, season 8. In the Dark getting renewed. I don't even know what that is. Legacies got renewed. Nancy Drew got renewed. Riverdale got renewed. Roswell, New Mexico wraps up that list of all the shows that got renewed. And if you're thinking to yourself, oh, does that mean Superman and Lois is in trouble? No, it's that and. Walker got renewed. Superman and Lois and Stargirl, which is they're still calling a summer series, didn't get renewal. But Superman and Lois did get 2 additional episodes, so they're getting 15 episodes for this season instead of 13 like planned. Walker also got additional 5 episodes, taking that to 18. Everything had a shorter order this year, obviously because of the pandemic.
Condensed time frame as well to air them all in.
So Superman and Lois and Stargirl, it's just because they've not even debuted yet. That's why they've not been renewed yet. So.
Perfectly reasonable.
The article even mentions that further down, is that the shows that have not even debuted yet, they're just not going to announce anything yet. It's fine. Nothing to worry about. If you were concerned, that is. But yeah. So what season are we on?
It is season 7 and 8 for Flash.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So.
By the way, just you mentioned Riverdale there, and it reminded me. Have you seen what the hell is going on in that show? I
haven't. No.
They're doing a 7-year time jump for this season that has just started or is about to start.
It explains why all the actors don't look, high school or early college age anymore.
There was like a 1-minute trailer that came on my Twitter feed right after I was talking about this with someone, so I watched it, and they've made Betty into Clarice from Like,
from Silence of the Lambs.
yeah, they literally have her, FBI training. She's doing the running through the woods thing. Like the whole, like, it's literally like they've just gone and went, no, she's Clarice now. It's fine.
Who are the others then?
I don't know. I can't remember. It was a 1 minute trailer. I just watched that.
I love
and it was
the
just
idea
like,
they've all morphed into famous movie characters, but they all still coexist and talk to each other. But she's hunting Hannibal Lecter over there whilst.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what they're doing because it was, like I say, it was a 1 minute trailer, but it was like so clearly like blatant. It's like, oh, she's Clarice. Okay.
Oh.
Which is weird given that there's a Clarice show starting like this week, I think.
I mean, who's Archie? Jack Bauer? I mean, anyway,
I have no idea.
So let's go. Can you believe Legends? I mean, admittedly, I think Supergirl didn't last as long as Legends just because Melissa Benoist got pregnant and married and now wants to go be a family or raise a family is what I'm trying to say. And whatever, but I did not expect Legend of Tomorrow to outlast some of the shows that it did outlast. I mean,
less episodes, I think. Still,
that doesn't really mean anything.
Well, no,
That doesn't mean it. And in the context of renewals and cancel, that does not mean anything.
It doesn't. No.
Like I don't know. I could have seen it like technically outlasting, say, Black Lightning in terms of season number, but it started so much earlier that I could have still seen Legends ending first. I still expected to end first before Black Lightning finished, but still maybe have more overall seasons. Legends surviving when several of the other shows have gone now, and might even end up with more seasons than Flash by the time, or Arrow, I mean to say, by the time it's done. It's actually really funny to me.
If Legends gets more seasons than Arrow, then we know there is some justice in the world.
So there you go. So Legends Tomorrow got renewed. Superman and Lois got 2 additional episodes, put it up to 15. So cool.
Perfectly reasonable. Although, by the way, there was a new trailer for that. It's shot like some sort of cinema format. I didn't see exactly where it was because it was a terrible cropping on Twitter, but
it was wider than. But I mean, the Batwoman's already been wider than 16:9 anyway. So CW's already been experimenting with allowing different ratios. The new trailer is really funny because it still has all the same sort of dialogue, and the curly-haired son is clearly going to be the Lex Luthor of the new generation because he's a little shit by the sounds of it. What's funny is that it starts off with better music because there's a little bit of the John Williams theme and the piano, but then it goes into a rock song or something, and it felt out of place, and I'm like, this is what are we doing? I'm still concerned about the color palette though. It still looks a bit too dull,
and I'm still feeling that they're taking some of that Snyder style cinematography.
Yes,
like I think there was a shot of him like floating in space, and there was a shot of him charging up the heat vision, and I was like, okay.
There's but the curly hair sounds like, oh, you lied to us, and he's been really annoying about it, and I'm like, look, the pair of you, really, you never figured this out? Like, honestly, I'm judging you two for this, right?
How much of the review of the first episode is just going to be us going, these kids are stupid as shit?
But it seems like the curly-haired one's the one who's going to ultimately be the villain, and the other one's going to be ultimately the new Superboy or Superman or whatever. And
that's what we'll think for the first season, and then they'll swerve us.
I mean, they might do that, but based on the trailer, the curly-haired one looks like the troublemaker. But anyway, so that's the CW renewing a bunch of shit. So good stuff. On the opposite end of the spectrum, they announced on Sci-Fi that season 4 of Winona Earp is going to be the last season. And it's actually been on break in the middle of that season. It's coming back with its last 6 episodes starting on March 5th. It's a little unclear. I mean, the showrunner sort of put out a happy enough statement about, we're proud of these last 6 episodes. It's unclear as far as I can tell if they knew this was going to be the last 6 episodes, or if... I think it's weird because of the pandemic. When did they find out? Were they already written?
I would say... because if you remember, there was a lot of drama with this between seasons.
Yes.
I would say maybe they didn't know that this was going to be the last season. Maybe they weren't told explicitly.
But they felt lucky.
Given everything that went down, they thought we should probably play it safe. I would hope so anyway. I would in that scenario. Yeah,
they probably felt lucky to get that 4th season because of all the trouble behind the scenes with the different companies and wanting to make it and so on. It was all financial stuff. It was all about who wants to pay for actually making the show.
But it was messy. That's why it's been so long to get this last season.
But 4's not a terrible run. I did enjoy season 1. when we watched it. It's the sort of thing that I'll probably happily binge at some point when it's all done and available
I liked
somewhere.
it well enough. I know it's got a very, very rabid fan base that are trying to petitions and see if they can get anywhere else to pick it up for any more. I don't know if anything will come from it in this case.
Yeah, one of the later paragraphs reminded me there was a character on the show called Officer Hot, and
Oh yeah, forgot about that.
it gave me a chuckle, reminding myself of that. Next up, we got a trailer for the Mighty Ducks Game Changers, the Mighty Ducks revival show for Disney Plus, which is premiering on March 26th. So this is a 10-episode show. Lauren Graham's in there, and Emilio Estevez is the one confirmed returning character from the movies, which has always struck me as odd because it felt so obvious that you have Joshua Jackson come back as Charlie, who was like the sort of the main kid from the first movie, and he wasn't as the central focus in the second two. He was kind of a bit more just ensemble, but you bring him back. He's obviously the biggest kid in terms of a name. I mean, arguably. Keenan from Keenan and Kel, he's quite big as well, I suppose. But
yeah,
but Joshua Jackson, you bring Joshua Jackson back and you have him be the new coach. That's how you do the next generation of Mighty Ducks. What this show is doing, however, and we can read this from the premise, but just actually seeing the trailer now, is that it's about forming a team because the Mighty Ducks team are now a proper team and they're kind of the villains. And this is very Cobra Kai because
I was going to say, yeah.
Everything I know about Cobra Kai is that, oh no, the good guy's now the villain, and it's now following. I mean, admittedly, this is not following the Iceland team from the original who are training to get revenge on the Mighty Ducks, but it's about this kid they reject, and Emilio Estevez decides to help form a new team with this kid and a bunch of misfits, and they're going to try and train and presumably beat the Mighty Ducks by the end of the season.
That's usually how these stories go, yeah.
It's weird. It's a weird, like, the trailer's not bad. I like the trailer, and the feel of the trailer is kind of what I expect a new show set in the Mighty Ducks universe to feel like, but a bit sentimental.
Yeah, I mean, it's weird because I actually have like very little to no attachment to Mighty Ducks. I've seen them, but they're not. Most sports movies in general are not really my thing. Even the good popular ones, I don't really care for them. So yeah, but this looks like exactly what I would expect it to be, and it looks perfectly fine if you're into that. Mighty
Ducks has a shockingly good score across the three movies.
I'll give you that. Yeah.
It's shockingly for a kids sports movie and then sequels. It has a shockingly good bombastic fanfare score, and it would be criminal if they did not use that in this show. And I would understand. And I'd understand if they hold it back until the final game of the season where they kind of start to win, then you start dun 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 dun, and you sort of build up to it and just hold it back for that last episode. I would appreciate. I would respect that. I would respect that choice to make me wait for it. But you have to give me that at some point in that show.
I think it's likely they'll blow their load and use it in the first episode, but I think they should probably save it for the last episode of the season.
I mean, I'd be completely fine if it was like. I mean, I think the main heroic, fanfare bit should probably wait till the last episode, but I do think other parts of it should be, sprinkled throughout. But I'd accept them not doing anything with it until the last episode, just for the shock and the surprise and the nostalgia injection right into the veins with a big needle. Imagine the needle, Connor.
I will do no such thing.
Imagine the needle in your veins.
It's fine. I'm tired enough that I could just tune you out.
Oh, it slipped. It slipped. You're bleeding. You're bleeding
all
over the place.
It's fine.
All right. Yeah. Obviously, this is that sort of thing we cover. It's just going to be like Disney Plus as well has also proven that the runtime is going to be fairly short. I don't imagine a 25-minute episode of building up a team of kids ice hockey is going to make for riveting discussion on the channel. No. But hey, it exists. I will probably check at least the first episode out myself, not to review, just out of curiosity because I care a little bit about Mighty Ducks. But
there's a weird thing here where, thanks to the Marvel shows and such, you've kind of been locked into Disney Plus all of a sudden.
I mean, it's really the Marvel shows. I wouldn't have got Disney Plus to try this.
Well, no, but like now that they're there and are going to be for the foreseeable future.
It's worth mentioning, I have watched nothing on Disney Plus but WandaVision. I have not touched a single thing in that service outside of it since I got it for that.
Boring.
There's nothing else on there I want. I've browsed through everything, and I've sort of chuckled at some of the random shows that I remember from Disney Channel, or the random crappy Disney Channel original movies that I saw when I was a kid. Like, oh, there's that 31st century girl one, or the skating one, Brink, I think it's called. I was like, oh, I remember that.
I have no idea what that is.
But other than that, I'm just it's all a pit of nothing. You get the Marvel section, which I've already seen all of, barring the new thing, obviously. And that's the bit. Star Wars, I'm not even touching. I don't give a shit about the Star Wars section. Luckily, International Disney Plus is about to get a little bit better later in February, where they might actually justify its existence beyond just this new original content. So
yeah, there's quite a lot of, I mean, for our stuff, interesting looking content actually getting on there, which is nice.
Yeah. So hey, we'll see. Anyway, so that's the Mighty Ducks Game Changers. There's another trailer, but it's attached to another news story, so I'll come up a little bit better later. Next up, Netflix set a premiere date for Shadow and Bone. This is the new series they're doing based on the Grishaverse novels. I'm sure we talked about this at some point.
I'm sure we did, but I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is one of the young adult ones.
It definitely sounds like one. It's premiering on April 23rd, but it's Netflix, so it'll all be out in one day.
Yeah.
I wonder how long it is until they cave and start doing stuff weekly.
I don't think they can. I think it's too late.
Oh, I think they can. I encourage it even, but I think they totally can. I think they're looking at the water cooler effect, and I hate the phrase water cooler. I hate it. Right? I just like weekly TV because we can talk about it. Right? I would have to give it a phrase, the water cooler, but like. It's true. People talking about WandaVision every week and reacting to it all over Twitter, and people reacting to Mandalorian every week, and same thing happened to Expanse on Amazon this past season. Like, people talk about the shows every week. The best example is if you go to Reset Era, and there was a thread for season 5 of The Expanse, and there was one last year for season 4 of The Expanse. The season 5 thread was like 3 times the size of the season 4 thread, because with season 4, people just stopped. Everyone burned out of talking about it after a couple days, and then that was it. Season 5's thread, every week there was a new injection, and it sort of drummed up conversation again.
We've been over this a million times. I'm clearly on the side of weekly TV is better, and I would like that from Netflix. But when I say it's too late for them, I think they're too into their brand being, the Netflix style release. It's too ingrained into what they are now that I think they're stuck with it.
I think they cave at some point.
Okay, we'll see.
Once everyone else is doing it, I think they cave at some point, because they're going to get sick of one of their shows being not talked about after a week, because there's going to be so much stuff every week from everywhere else that, like, that window of people talking about a good Netflix show when it's dropped is going to get shorter, because within a week there'll be other stuff released elsewhere that'll take the limelight.
You'll have a Marvel or a Star Wars show almost guaranteed.
Yeah. So the only way to keep it in the conversation will be to do weekly, and I mean, they're not going to just jump completely. They'll try it with one thing, then maybe another, and then if they like the results.
How bizarre is it that in roughly a year's time, we're probably going to have a Marvel show and a Star Wars show every week? Like, they're going to be at that point within about a year where they'll have an episode of each,
and not the same service, but Star Trek as well.
Yeah, of course, I forgot about that. Although they're a little bit further behind on being ready for weekly, I think. But yeah, it won't be that much further.
I mean, to be fair, they had a run there for a while. Picard almost more or less went into Lower Decks, which almost more or less went into Discovery Season 3. So this is the first time they've been on a break now in over half a year. So I mean, they did a good long stretch there. So it's
No, they're getting there.
We're finding our way there. So yeah, Shadow and Bone. Yeah. So a war-torn world where a lowly soldier orphan named Alina Starkov has just unleashed an extraordinary power that could be the key to setting our country free. There's a lot more of a description. I'm going to stop there.
I vaguely remember this one when you said the name. This is the Russian-themed fantasy one, I think. Yeah, okay.
Probably not for me, but that's when it's coming out. That's April 23rd, just to reiterate that. Next up, Tim Drake's been cast in season 3 of Titans. Jay Lycurgo. I mean, I don't really know anything about this actor. I mean, the actor, whatever, fine. The more interesting part here is that they're loading up with characters in Titans, and from everything I've heard about season 2 is that they were struggling to manage the cast they had, and we're getting at least Barbara Gordon and Tim Drake added in season 3. So,
yep, there are a lot of hardcore fans of the show disappointed by this announcement because, like I say, season 2 it lost the focus of the main 4 characters from the first season, and a lot of them didn't enjoy that. They were hoping it would kind of pare back to focus on them more this season, and it looks unlikely.
Yeah, and I think they're doing Red Hood, Jason Todd stuff next season.
Probably. I think that sounds familiar. That. Yeah.
It was after bringing in Tim. At the very least, he's getting his head bashed in. I would assume.
I mean, it's a reasonable assumption.
If not outright being shifted to Red Hood status, but so that's that. Next up, Chiwetel Ejiofor has been cast in The Man Who Fell to Earth that Paramount Plus are doing. This was obviously a book, and it was a movie starring David Bowie once upon a time. So Paramount Plus are doing a new version of it. Unfortunately, Alex Kurtzman's the co-writer on it, so it's probably going to be meh.
Mediocre at best.
Ejiofor's a good actor, though.
He is, yeah.
I can definitely see him playing an alien quite well. So, yeah, this is the thing. So that's Paramount Plus. The name change hasn't quite officially happened yet, but obviously everything that's been announced for things now is all Paramount Plus.
Every time you say it, I have a second of going, Paramount Plus, which one's that? And my brain has to catch up because it's not quite stuck yet, but it'll get there.
Here's something you care about. The Sandman from Netflix announced a bunch of cast members.
I do care about this
past couple of weeks. So, yes. Tom Sturridge, Gwendolyn Christie, Vivian Akampong, probably butchering that, Boyd Halbrook, Charles Dance, I like Charles Dance, Asim Chaudhry, Shaviv Bhaskar. Also, I'm seeing... Oh, no, I'm not seeing. I thought I saw a photo of Lance Henriksen attached to this, and I was going to be like, what a score, what I get. I think it was just a photo of Charles Dance. Looks very Lance Henriksen in this black and white still they've put of him.
Fair enough.
But yes. So there you go. That's your cast for Sandman.
Yeah, I'm not familiar with the lead. Forgetting his name already.
Dream, you're thinking of?
Yeah.
That's Tom Sturridge.
Yeah, not super familiar with him. Obviously, Gwendolyn Christie is playing Lucifer, so that should be fun. Looking forward to that. That's maybe some inspired casting. I think the notable exception of who they didn't give us casting announcements for, because this is, assuming they're adapting roughly the early stories, which based off some of the other characters that they're showing us here, they are. There's no casting for Death yet, so don't know who that's going to be. I wonder if there's a reason they've saved that for a separate announcement. Could be someone maybe a bit more notable.
But hey, there you go. I don't have a lot to add on this. I'm interested to check the show out, but I don't have a lot to add on the speculation at this point.
Yeah, I'm very excited. I know there's a couple of characters in there that they've swapped the gender for. I think Vivian is playing. I can't remember what they've called now. It was Lucian in the comic. I think whatever they've changed the name to slightly. It's like, all right, cool. So obviously the internet was up in arms about that.
Oh, of course. So next up, Frasier might finally be getting that sequel series that Kelsey Grammer's been wanting to do for. When did Frasier end?
I was going to say
about 2003, 2004. Yeah, so about 16, 17 years he's been gunning for this. So yeah, but this is again Paramount Plus. They're close to a 10-episode order for a follow-up. They mentioned that they apparently David Hyde Pierce, who plays Niles, is apparently being approached about returning as well, so there could be a return of Niles. Which, here's the thing, if you get Niles, you have to get Daphne at this point. Like, you have to. And if they do the thing where they can get him but they can't get her, so they just write in, wow, well, they split up at some point, I'd be livid. No, you give them a happy ending. Don't ruin it because you have to make a new series.
But you're forgetting something, Pete.
Yes.
Money. New show means money.
New show does mean money. But it would be setting off the whole thing in a very wrong foot, especially since the premise of the possible Frasier like sequel was always going to be that he's just moved to a new city again and he's going to have a new supporting cast, and it's this even though a lot of the reasons, I mean, Frasier Crane was a great character, don't get me wrong, but obviously that supporting cast is a lot of what made Frasier. Like, Niles, Daphne, Roz,
It's
Martin.
True for pretty much any successful show, especially a sitcom though.
And don't get me wrong, while that means that this new one has a lot to do because it has to essentially work on its own merits, even though one of the characters is there. At least it would be a fresh start and be okay, well, we can judge it as its own thing, just it happens to have Frasier in it, as opposed to, oh, they've brought some, and obviously, Martin can't come back, the actor's passed away, of course, but that's fine, because you could just have in the show, he passed away of old age anyway, that's fine, especially since Niles and Frasier aren't exactly young spring chickens anymore themselves.
No, it's not like they can pretend this picks up right after.
Yeah, so that's fine. But having to split up Niles and Daphne if they go to, I mean, admittedly, I don't know what Jane Leaves, I think her name is. I don't know if she would be that against coming back anyway, presumably. But I mean, I will say I'm a bit skeptical of this because it kind of feels like Kelsey Grammer's gunning for this just because it's his one big success is the character of Frasier Crane, and he
wants a nice steady paycheck.
He wants that steady paycheck again. Interesting, getting a 10-episode order, given that it was a network sitcom that ran for 25, 26 episodes a lot of the seasons.
Yeah, I think this is just the nature of the day when it comes to streaming services ordering anything, sitcoms included.
Yeah, so yeah, be interesting to see if they do get Niles back. And this does happen, what they do. I think you have to get Daphne. I'd love to see Roz back too, but I think Roz you can leave aside because she's so separate. But Niles if you get Niles, you have to have Daphne, and vice versa, I think. So
the only way that you can do it is if she also died, and that's part of the show is.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would work. If she died, she got cancer or something and died.
I think, like you say, if they split up, that would be a bit of a kick in the teeth. But I think if she passed away, that would be a bit more palatable, I guess.
Especially because, I mean, obviously the actors are all older now. She could have died, I mean, still young for death, but, like, she could have died at 60, so they still had, like, 25 happy years together before,
Yeah.
That we could pick up right after she dies. That could be, like, the start of... And their kids would be, like, teenagers at least now. Maybe even in their 20s by now. Did they have kids by the end? I can't remember.
I can't remember. It's been years.
I can't remember if they had. I want to say she might even give birth in the finale. That might have been a thing in the finale. So what did I say? 17 years.
Give or take. Yeah.
So I mean, we could have some cookie. Maybe we could have if they have a couple of kids. Let's say one's really like Frasier and Niles, but the other one's really like Daphne. So you have the clash of character styles.
There are definitely ways you can play it.
Yeah, I don't know. There's potential, so we'll see. And it is so far removed that if it is terrible and if it does kind of sully whatever happier ending we got back in the day, it's probably going to be quite easy to sort of just ignore it as this weird extra thing that they did much later that we can just it's not canon. We'll just ignore it.
Sure.
Fine.
Yeah.
But I mean, if it happens, I hope it's good. Part of me thinks you should
not hold your breath for it though.
Part of me thinks you should leave well enough alone, but I do think the potential's there. If the writing's there to make it work, then
I think that's the wrong. Like conceptually, there's nothing wrong with it. We're only annoyed potentially by it in the same way that we were talking about earlier. Maybe you can just let things end.
I think sitcoms are a weird thing where they're different to everything else we talk about because for the most part, sitcoms are a family in a house or they're just a set of characters who meet at a bar to go to Cheers. And the funny thing is, if you come back 15 years later and these characters who you sort of saw as a family because they all liked each other and they were all friends or literally family, of course they're still together and you're not really betraying anything by saying they're still together and they're still interacting with each other. it doesn't feel forced to still have them be a functioning unit, and as long as it's still funny and they still feel like the characters they were, then there's not really any harm in it. Whereas when we have to force, characters in a more sci-fi adventure show where the story wrapped up and the threat was defeated, it's like, oh, the villains now get a son we never knew about, and he's evil too, and then we have to go fight him. We don't have to do that with a sitcom. Some sitcoms do it. The Office had that problem where by the time you got to about season 7, it's like, okay, why are some of these characters still working at this place? I mean, Jim and Pam should have left years ago at this point, but yeah,
there's stagnation. I think that's a bigger problem with workplace comedies though, rather than family unit ones.
Yeah, the family ones can kind of just last as long as the writing is there to keep it working, basically. There's nothing where you're sitting going, they shouldn't still be here. The only thing is if the kids are at an age where they should be going off to college, maybe you have to, work around that a little bit if you don't want to lose the character. But enough kids just go to college at home. That doesn't really, it's fine. They're going to a college that's nearby. Whatever, they can
live
at
local,
home.
Yeah. It's there are solutions to all those problems.
Yeah. All right, moving on. So this is where the next trailer comes in, but we also with the announcement of the new showrunner for The Nevers, the HBO show, which was originally Joss Whedon. Philippa Goslet, who has worked on films Mary Magdalene and How to Talk to Girl at Parties, is taking over showrunning duties. And we also got the first teaser trailer for this, and did announce that it was coming in April, and the end of the trailer. Given when unless he'd kind of stopped working on it a long time before the announcement, I have to imagine that the first season is still largely his scripts and stuff like that.
My assumption is, again, unless they kept it under wraps for a while, which is possible, this is still going to be almost entirely his work, or at least a showrunner, if not, his actual scripts. I don't know how much.
Yeah, given that we got this trailer, it's just debuting in April. I have to imagine that by the time they announced, or by the time he made that choice, he'd probably at least directed the pilot, if not maybe even more. I mean, we'll find out soon. I mean, it'll be pretty clear once we start getting credits and stuff. But I feel like this first season will still mostly be his, which is funny because the trailer, I don't think there's nothing. I mean, the general idea of strong female characters obviously is kind of Whedon-y, but there's nothing in the trailer that feels Whedon-y.
Well, that's because there's very little dialogue.
That's true. It's a couple of one-liners, but there's none of that wit that's there.
It's a very bland trailer, and honestly, if I didn't have a preconception of what this show was, knowing for years that this was that Joss Whedon idea, and it was the Victorian era superheroes thing.
It's X-Men. It's Victorian X-Men.
It is, yeah. If I didn't know that going in and had some level of excitement for years of this bubbling away, I would have had absolutely zero interest after watching this trailer. It does nothing for me.
It's not a great trailer. It's just kind of whatever. But many a good TV shows had a mediocre trailer.
It's true. I'm hoping the show's still good, but like I say, this was a bland trailer.
It's because it's just one-liners and action kicks and punches, and that's basically it. All it really tells you is, there was an event that gave a bunch of women some superpowers, and society kind of hates them now. So it's like, okay, you've created a new kind of X-Men style show overnight, and this is what it's going to be. The Victorian setting is definitely weird, and it's definitely the thing that makes it need the HBO budget, because I feel like if you just set this in present day, you could do this on a network.
What do you mean could do this on a network? They have done it on a network.
I mean this show specifically. I know that other shows. I'm not saying that no one's ever done anything like this on a network. Okay, I'm saying this show specifically could have just been done on a network's budget if it wasn't set in Victorian. The Victorian is what makes it need all the money, and it does. It doesn't look cheap. It looks like they've put money into sets and costumes and whatnot.
I think that's one of the weird things about this trailer, though, is beyond just the visual, there was nothing that told me they were playing with the period at all. Yeah,
what little dialogue we get actually sounds very normal, and not just in that it's not Whedon witty, not like normal, in the sense it's also not really of the era sounding. It sounds just kind of normal action TV show dialogue, which is kind of weird.
It's a choice, because I get why they want to do that. They want it to be accessible for people. They don't want to put people off by it sounding awkward or off to people, but also kind of what's the point in saying it in your time period if you're just going to treat it like it's present day?
That said, It's a minute and a half trailer for a show that's going to be 10 episodes, and it's almost pointless sitting
I think
critiquing all this right now.
We're only really judging it as harshly as we are because it's the first trailer, and it's a pretty poor showing on that. I mean, you want a stronger first impression, really.
To compare it to something else, the first trailer for the Avengers movie was really bad. It was just an Nine Inch Nails song playing over some explosions, and it looked really generic. And the movie was a hit. Like, everyone loved it.
Yeah, I'm not disputing that. And we kind of said, good shows have bad trailers all the time.
Yeah, so that's covered it. Obviously, we're going to check it out. This is just I mean, it's an interesting one, if nothing else. So this next thing is not something you don't care about, but
okay,
it's kind of a big deal in a really weird way. So WWE, of course, have the WWE Network, their own streaming service, which they came up with in 2015, I think. $10 a month. That's how you get the pay-per-views now. All the back catalogs there. Blah 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 blah. They announced about a week and a half ago that the standalone version of it in the US, not worldwide, but in the US, is shutting down, effectively. And it's now exclusively going to be on Peacock. It's going to be a hub within Peacock now, which is honestly, all kinds of fascinating.
I did see this, and despite not giving a shit about wrestling, I do actually think the logistics of it are interesting, and it's the inevitable implosion of streaming services. We saw them expand into DC things. WWE, DC Universe is another good one. Not necessarily a good service, but a good example of all these ridiculously niche services that are still ultimately charging a comparative price to the big ones that offer a much wider variety. So they just can't build up the subscribers needed. So of course they cut an umbrella in, and we saw it with DC Universe moving into HBO Max.
The funny thing with this, so Peacock, of course, is Universal, who own USA Network, and that's where Raw and NXT air. It's not where SmackDown airs. SmackDown airs on Fox, but they have a pretty strong relationship with Universal, because that's where they air two of their shows. And there was rumors for a while, a few months ago, that they wanted to maybe start trying to make monies on off pay-per-views again. Because apparently, even though the pay-per-views were $50 or $60 in the US every month when they were back in the pay-per-view model,
that much,
yeah, extortionate. When they switched to streaming, the idea being is that, of course, okay, we're only getting $10 a month from everyone, but it's so cheap that everyone's going to sign up and never cancel because they can get everything and all the back catalog, and it seemed like a fine idea. The problem is that they basically plateaued in subscribers years ago, and it never actually hit high enough to make up for the difference in cost or the money that we're making from pay-per-views.
Genuine question here, because obviously I pay very little attention to wrestling. How much do people watch the back catalogue stuff? Did they ever release those? Is that something that appeals to a lot of people, or is it more of just it's cool because it's there?
I mean, I've never released the numbers. I think a lot of people do like the back catalogue. I think there's actually a lot of people who have no interest in because it's been terrible for years. It's been bland and shit for years. But a lot of people have a lot of nostalgia for when they watched it when it was good. Usually, I mean, obviously for our age groups, it kind of aligns with being younger and when you're a certain age as a kid. But it actually was considered a good period as opposed to just
even by the people who were older at the time. Yeah.
So people like to go back and watch stuff. The really classic stuff from basically the first WrestleMania era through to the Attitude Era is quite popular for people to go back and rewatch. The content from the mid 2000s onwards, I don't know how much value a lot of that has for people.
I didn't know, because obviously I see people talk about wrestling all the time. They talk about the big classic stories, matches, whatever. But I've never heard anyone say they're rewatching things. So, I'm not in the circles though, so.
And it was good value for what it is, right? I mean, take away from the fact that WWE's content has been terrible for a long time you won't understand a lot of the terminology, but I'll just say the rating's been bad, right? I'll just boil it down to that. That's not. I know wrestling fans are like, it's the booking. I know it's the booking. I'm saying it in terms that Connor can understand. It's been bad for a long time, but let's assume it wasn't. Let's assume it was at least decent, if not good. The idea that for $10 a month you get the $50, $60 pay-per-views every month as part of that, plus all the back catalog, was a no-brainer. It's just like if you're a wrestling fan and you care about the thing, you want to see it, this was night and day. You should absolutely have this. But the problem is that because effectively, unless and you can always sign up for a month if you want to like binge some back catalog stuff, you want to go back and watch like a bunch of old Royal Rumbles or something, you can go do that if you want. But the main draw is the monthly pay-per-views. That's the real reason why anyone has it. It's not the original content, even though some of the documentary content they've done here or there has been all right. That's what you're there for. You're there for the monthly pay-per-views. The problem is that when they realized it's plateaued and they can't make up the cost of what they were earning before. Now, they've made it up in other places. For some reason, they keep getting insane TV deals where they're making millions and millions in contracts with TVs, even though their ratings are plummeting. Like, their ratings... January, like comparing a random Raw in January to last year's Raw in January, you're looking at about 500,000 less viewers, and it was already like the lowest it'd ever been last year. Like it's this, it's terrible. The ratings are in the worst place they've ever been, but they keep making these deals, and this deal here was $1 billion for I think 5 years, so it's 200 million a year, which sounds like a lot of money, but then when you stop and think about, well, okay, so $200 million a year, that's at least 12 pay-per-views, plus all the back catalogue content as part of your streaming service. It's actually quite low when you consider how much content it actually is. It's now part of Peacock. And it's not, and I'm pretty sure it's not, Peacock isn't, and yeah, you don't have to pay any extra for this now. It's if you've got Peacock,
right,
you get this.
That's what I was going to say, because obviously...
It's not an add-on. It's like, I mean, the same rules of Peacock apply because Peacock has a free tier, a basic tier, and a premium tier. The same rules apply to the content if you're on those tiers, which is interesting because the one with ads, I don't know how they're going to handle that with the live pay-per-views. Like, how do you insert ads out of live pay-per-views? Maybe those will just be exempt because they have to be because it doesn't work. Or either that, or they're actually going to build in time for ads, which would be insane in a pay-per-view. Because a pay-per-view, you don't get ads. There's a premium piece of content.
Well, there's two options there. One, they just slap ads in and tough shit you miss some, and that's the price you pay for
the free or the basic.
The free version.
Yeah.
Or alternatively, they've got something worked out with WWE that no, you're building in time for ads, which, like you say, would be insane. But I mean, it's not impossible.
Because that's the difference between TV wrestling and pay-per-view wrestling. TV wrestling, you accept that the long matches have an ad break in the middle. It's just the way it is. It's the way it has to be, and you accept it. And they kind of design the matches around that. They know that the middle chunk is going to be missed by a lot of people, or it'll be picture-in-picture during the ad, so they won't hear the sound. So they'll make sure they don't do anything too exciting in that part, so that when it comes back,
That's the bit that I wouldn't be too surprised if they follow that.
But that would mean that the pay-per-views are effectively TV wrestling, and that would mean that you don't get the best types of matches that you typically get at those events, in theory. Now, again, you don't always. Sometimes the work's just not good enough, and it just ends up being bad anyway. Yeah. But so this is fascinating from a logistics point of view. It's basically WWE wanting to make money from another source and throwing in the towel. Now, what's funny is that this is obviously only applies to the US, so it effectively means they're running their own network still, but only for international audiences, which is weird in and of itself. But the part that is fascinating to me is that, unlike, because DC Universe is a different case in a way, because Warner Brothers owns that, and it was always kind of weird if the new HBO Max was coming, not just to include it in that, and it was just kind of them mismanaging things more than anything else.
Yeah.
This is WWE throwing in the towel and saying, this isn't worth it on our own. We'd make more money by selling this content to another streaming service and just going with that. And if they get to a point where they want to offer, say, okay, the back catalogue is part of Peacock, but the pay-per-views now are going to be a little bit extra per month. Like, because I know ESPN do that, where they still have pay-per-views built into the service. So I do wonder if they're going to start trying to do that again, or... the problem is, though, this is the problem they're going to face, is that they've trained everyone that their pay-per-views are worth no more than $10 a month, and anyone being faced with the prospect of having to pay a penny more than that to get access to, quite frankly, what are really bad on average pay-per-views now, are not going to want to do it. I'd be shocked if they do.
I would say, let's hypothetically just assume the quality gets better, right? Just for argument's sake.
Okay, it's a big F,
Let's just.
sure.
I know that's a big ask, but let's just assume the quality is good and people want to watch the pay-per-views, right? Based on their quality rather than just out of habit. I think there's an argument to be made that it would be good for them to charge more, just to reset the value. Going, no, we'll lose people at first, but if there's no other way to watch it, people will pay for it because they want to watch it still.
It's kind of a snake eating its own tail thing a little bit, because one of the arguments for why it's been so stale and bad for the last few years, specifically, I mean, it was kind of, I'll be honest, it wasn't great for a long time before that, but there were still highlights and high spots and surprises here or there. But it's been really bland the last few years. And one of the arguments as to why that's been is because they just have a service where everyone's signed up and keeps paying, they have no incentive to improve. They have no incentive to actually compete and try and make it compelling again, because they have this built-in audience who pay every month. They're getting these big TV deals who are paying them more than they've ever been paid, despite the fact that their ratings are worse than... I mean, honestly, Vince McMahon is one of the best con men there is. He somehow gets companies to pay him millions and millions of dollars for a product that is waning. It's weird.
There have been people like that all throughout history.
Yeah.
It just, you look at the things that they did, and and then still they are popular, and you get deals, and and you're like, how? What deal did you make with what devil?
It's absolutely fascinating. Because it's funny, because AEW, which is the wrestling show I watch, which is I don't want to turn this just it's better than WWE, but generally speaking, it is much better. There's a reason why I watch that. I don't watch WWE. But that has 4 pay-per-views a year, and they are priced. They're $50, I think, in the US. They're a bit cheaper here because they know that UK people and other countries wouldn't dare pay that.
Bastards.
We wouldn't dare pay that. Hey, but I was watching.
I think even the boxing barely charges that much for the pay-per-views. That's a lot bigger thing.
Oh yeah, they're £15 here. The pay-per-views. The pay-per-views that are $50 in the US, they're £15 here.
So that's what, maybe $20.
$20, yeah. So it's less than half the price. Hell, when I was watching wrestling as a kid, they used to just be on Sky Sports. They weren't pay-per-views.
Really?
Yeah. So they weren't free, because I mean Sky Sports is a subscription, so I mean you had to have that, but they were effectively free. It was on the same channel they aired the weekly show, so there was nothing extra to do to get the pay-per-view.
If you were watching it anyway, yeah.
So I remember when they first had to, and do you know how they started doing pay-per-views in the UK? It was almost just not an accident, but it wasn't like an intentional planned thing. They wanted to make wrestling more mainstream in the UK, so they did this thing where they made a deal with Channel 4, which is one of, if you're outside the UK, Channel 4 is one of our main networks, right, that everyone gets.
The terrestrial basics.
Yes, a network channel. I don't know if anyone uses the word terrestrial outside the UK.
I think, and technically they're not even terrestrial anymore, because
everyone went digital a long time ago, yeah. But so it's one of the main channels, and they made a deal that 4 pay-per-views out of the 12 of the year would air on Channel 4. And Channel 4 also got, I think, like a highlight show once a week or something like that. I didn't get the full weekly show, but it got like a highlight show or something. So they made this big deal, and it was a kind of a disaster, because I remember watching Royal Rumble, I think 2000, and Channel 4 insisted on still putting in ads. So they effectively started off live, but then kind of went out of sync as it went on, because they kept pushing back the next part because they wanted to put in an ad break, even though it was airing at 1 a.m, which is the time when you can get away with maybe having almost no ads if you want to.
You could, but also that is the only way they make any money.
But it's like, okay, this was a terrible idea. If it wasn't going to be, treat it like a special thing. I don't know, but it was never going to work. They aired 2 pay-per-views. They aired that one, then they did the one that was in like April or whatever. It was it was every 3 months, which makes sense for a year. They pulled out a deal. The whole thing collapsed, and it meant that when we got to say August or September's pay-per-view, whatever the next one was going to be, there wasn't a deal with Sky anymore. Sky Sports, who had the deal and had the deal up until the last couple of years. I think BT got it like 2 years ago or something like that, last year. But well, we don't have a deal for those 4, so this next pay-per-view just doesn't have a home in the UK. So pay-per-views started happening in the UK as pay-per-views because they literally found themselves with no place for it to air. And it was like, well, can you put it on Sky Box Office, please? It was basically the response.
And then when they found out people were willing to pay, they were like, well, we'll keep doing this.
And I don't think they were at first. I think there was a few years where it was just those 4 a year that were pay-per-views, but then the rest were still on Sky Sports. And then eventually, at some point, they made the call to switch it. I had stopped watching by that point. I wasn't there for much longer after this debacle, but it was kind of funny that's how it ended up starting in the UK. But yeah, so this is fascinating. I mean, forget that it's about wrestling. Just the fact that a streaming service that was independent and felt like a big enough juggernaut to do it on its own when we're throwing in the towel.
It won't be the last one.
No, it won't be. And honestly, it's kind of good to an extent. This one's a bit weird because it's worldwide, and then only one country's having this weird deal. As long as it keeps operating everywhere, that's fine. The problem we might get into, though, is if they make a deal in other countries with other services, it might get a bit of a tangled web again, which is kind of the one thing that streaming is supposed to kind of untangle, is all this stupid international differences and whatnot. As long as the deal's the same, so like let's say in the UK they make a deal with pick a streaming service.
The most obvious and likely solution, if it was a pre-existing service in this case, I think would be Amazon Prime, because they already do live sports content and stream that. Yeah. So that this kind of feels like okay, that will. It's already built into their systems as how to handle it.
As long as everything went with the same as it's doing with Peacock, where it was the exact same service, it's just that it's through Amazon instead of Peacock. It wouldn't be a big deal, but things could get murky. If let's say they get tempted by a deal when someone says, Amazon says, oh, we want the pay-per-views, but we don't really want the back catalogue.
I think that's very likely. I think what will be really fascinating if you end up with something like what happens with football over here, or soccer to the Americans, where it's not exclusive to one company. Like the live games, some are on Sky Sports, some are on BT Sports, some are now on Amazon. Amazon have X amount of games a year are on Amazon exclusively. What happens when they're like, well, Amazon we'll pay for 8 pay-per-views and someone else can have the other 4.
That would be weird. Obviously the big difference is that type of sport has a lot more games, a lot more things to show. Does, yeah. So whereas because wrestling's like a serialized show almost, it is really bizarre to split it up like that. But we'll see. We'll see how things progress. I knew this would be an interesting discussion, despite the fact that you don't give a shit about wrestling, and I don't care.
I actually saw this news article, I said, because I think it's interesting from a just a streaming services point of view. That's what interests me. I don't care about the wrestling part of it, but the actual logistics of it do interest me. So
just to compare this to something else, just to finish this off, so you get when you go to Disney Plus and there's the Marvel tab and the Star Wars tab. This is what this is going to be now in Peacock. There's just going to be the WWE tab, and that's it. Which makes me wonder. I mean, AEW has 4 pay-per-views a year, and they are pricey, but there's only 4 a year, so they feel more special. They've never been free, so they feel like a premium thing, and because they're trying to sell you on it, because they want you to spend money on it, there's a lot of incentive to try and make it as best as possible, and to have enough compelling storylines get into it that you care about the payoff.
Sure, yeah.
It's a good incentive for them to work towards them to do that. It does make me wonder though, because they air on TNT. And that's Warner Brothers, like to HBO Max, eventually say, hey, maybe not pay-per-views, but maybe after the year old, can we have the back catalogue and have a AEW tab on HBO Max?
Yeah, maybe. Because is it Disney Plus that has ESPN? And
they have a bundle. That doesn't come as standard, but you can have a bundle.
No, but they have it as like an add-on, right? That you can access through that. In the same way that we're kind of talking about this, where it's got the Star Wars section, the Marvel section, and then sports section. It's definitely not unlikely that most streaming services, at least the ones that are like the big studios, are going to go this way.
Yeah,
that's not necessarily a bad thing. I think.
No, I mean the more that bundle together, so we don't have to have as many streaming services to get all the content, the better. But I can also see some of the potential deals happening being detrimental to us as well, depending on what the specifics are. It's very murky. As long as it's this entire streaming service merges with this one, and maybe it goes up $1 or $2 to account for it. But once it
I
starts
think-
being more than that, it might get a little bit weird.
No, that's true. I think at that point they have to choose. Right. Well, we'll do it as a a $2 add-on, and you can pick
Sure.
and choose which ones you want.
It's not going to be 2; it'll be 5. But yeah,
Sure. Right. Whatever it is
Yeah.
at the time, instead of just a blanket, everyone gets $2 increase. And because after a certain amount of time, there's too many of those that people don't care about that you'll turn people away.
yeah. And at which point, how many add-ons do you have before it's just cable again? Really, kind of. I mean, it's still better because you can still just pick and choose which ones you want,
and you can cancel at any time quite easily.
Cable's still a much worse beast because, at least as far as here goes, basically you have standard, all the channels but the really good ones, which is the movies and the sports, the premium stuff, and then you have to pay a fortune for those if you want those on top of that. So you're kind of like locked. If you want, let's say you just wanted the sci-fi channel, you're locked into the medium kind of tier pricing, which is already, significant. Whereas streaming is still much cheaper. If you just want the one thing, you can just go get the one thing. If you if you only care about Netflix, you just go get Netflix, and that's all you ever pay for, and that's
right.
it.
But if you like Netflix, Amazon, and something else, you can kind of bounce between them month to month if you really wanted to. There's all sorts of things. I think where this scenario gets particularly tricky is internationally. Because like you're saying, it's basically cable again. And that's how, where we have been for decades with international content. It's just shopped around various places. It's a mix match. It's all over the place. I don't think it's too far away until we're like that again.
Luckily, one thing I don't think will change for the worse too badly is that audiences are getting used to everything getting to something at the same time. And it's actually good for the discussion of it, because you look at anything coming out on Disney Plus and everyone talking about it.
They'll have seen that for themselves with their own evidence, because there was a lag with the launch in the UK for and the Mandalorian that it was out, first season was out, and it was like okay.
Yes, and spoilers are already out. Tons of people have pirated it already. Like all those things, all those reasons mean that there's an incentive not to unsync the content. And live wrestling and live sports is exactly the same. There's no point in having live things come later. No one cares. But so I don't think we're going to go down that murky path again. I do think that HBO Max will completely launch everywhere. The problem is that they signed deals not that long ago in a lot of places, and that's why they have to wait out those contracts before they can.
And those deals tend to be 3 to 5 years usually at a time. So it's a big waiting game when you've got a lot of content coming up.
Yes. So. That's unfortunate, and does mean that VPNs are still very useful. But it is what it is. But yeah, so that was a big deal. That was a big deal. So let's move on.
The most I've ever spoken about wrestling in any context.
All right, so we're out of some shows now. I will take this time to thank our Patreon producers before we move on. So thank you. To Tyler Hess, Cindy Palacios, David Sharp, Board Now, Al Treisman, Christopher Moy, Brett Williams, and David Brown. Those are our Patreon producers for the month. So thank you to you all. There are $20 or more on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, but you can support us over there for as little as $1 per month and help keep all the content coming and get some bonuses for your trouble. You can, of course, also support us for completely free by hitting the like button, subscribing, commenting. All these things do help with the YouTube algorithm, the dreaded algorithm, which we're all beholden to and dictates everyone's success. So please do hit the like button, if nothing else. Thank you. All right, so moving on to the shows. First up, we have a workplace comedy at NBC called Pushing. Where do you think this is set? Before I tell you what the workplace is, where do you think it's set? It's called Pushing.
What do you mean, like location, or what the workplace is?
What the workplace is? What is the what type of business?
Gym.
Is it? Birth center.
I couldn't even told you that was a thing. Let alone that guess that was what it was gonna be.
Pushing is an ensemble workplace comedy about an all-female birth center and the male doula who shows up to join the team. So there's like an odd man out, literally the odd man out.
Yes.
So I assume I assume this is I don't know if it's a place where you can give birth, but I assume this is where all the classes, the breeding classes, and
I mean, birth center implies to me that is where they give birth.
Maybe they do give birth
as opposed to being in a hospital, you go to one of these places, or
sure.
'Cause obviously some people do home births, so I'm assuming
this is that in between where we've got a dedicated space, but it's not the hospital. What you're saying?
Yeah, I'm sure they have medical facilities.
You got some midwives kicking around for the for the occasion.
I mean, just go to the hospital if you really don't want to go home. But whatever, weird.
So that's Pushing, coming from NBC. Next up, Lana Condor is going to star in a show for Netflix, a comedy called Boo Bitch. It's a good title.
Okay.
So 8-episode live-action comedy, limited series, coming from Erin Ehrlich from Crazy Ex-Girlfriend and King of the Hill, and Lauren Inningrich from On My Block and Awkward. Lana Condor is going to star in it and executive produce. So, and Boo Bitch. So there's a comma, of course. Boo Bitch. Just in case you're following.
Just making it clear, yeah.
Yes. And Boo Bitch, over the course of one night, a high school senior, played by Condor, who's lived her life safely under the radar, seizes the opportunity to change the narrative and start living an epic life, only to find out the next morning she's a mother effing ghost.
Okay. Sure.
So I thought it was going to be all set in one night based on that first sentence, but that's just the setup. It's just that one night's what makes her a ghost. So
that's the first episode, and then the ghostly reveal is the ending.
Whatever she does in her one night to be a little less shy gets her killed, and she's a ghost.
I guarantee there's at least 2 episodes after that one trying to figure out what happened.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, it's like The Hangover, but they died, kind of thing.
It's a hell of a hangover.
Yes. So that's Boo Bitch, coming to Netflix. Netflix have got some animated stuff in the works here. So they're going to do animes set in the Tomb Raider and Kong Skull Island universes. The Tomb Raider one specifically is a sequel to the trilogy of games that just came out. So it's specifically a sequel in continuity to those games.
I mean, it's very unlikely they're going to make any more games in that continuity. So, sure, why not?
It's sort of interesting, though. It's interesting that they're doing this, and if the show does well, though, it may actually encourage them to go back and do a 4th one. If this somehow hits a note in the consciousness,
it's possible.
You never know. Yeah. So, and then the Kong one, I don't know if it's as specific as this one in terms of its setting, beyond just it's going to be a Kong anime, but yeah.
Does Matt know about this yet?
It just says the new animated series will continue the story of these myths and monsters, which could mean anything, to be honest. This is just big.
I would assume that's implying it's following that that movie version at least. But I mean, beyond that,
yeah. But is it set after that movie? Is it set after the next movie that's coming out with Colin in it? Like it could be anywhere.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah. Not much to say on these. I'm not a big anime guy, even though I have somewhat interest in both franchises. But
yeah, I mean, you kind of mostly enjoyed the anime Godzilla movies that Netflix did, right? Or Netflix at least distributed.
Well, the third one was a train wreck, but
sure. But 2 out of 3.
The first 2 were okay. Yeah, the first 2 had some.
Yeah. And they've got I mean, assuming it's still happening, I believe they got a Pacific Rim anime coming.
Oh yeah, it's coming. There's a poster out and everything for. It's coming.
Oh, is it? Okay.
It's coming very soon. Yeah.
Oh really? Okay, cool.
So and then the next thing from Netflix, which is also an animated series, although they're not describing this as an anime, so whatever difference that really means. But they're doing a Sonic the Hedgehog animated series on Netflix, which will premiere worldwide in 2022. They're saying it's funny because it says, it's celebrating its 30th anniversary. But next year, the animated series is coming out, so they're announcing it for the anniversary.
I mean, yeah, there's enough there. You can get away with that. Sure.
And this is for kids. They say it's a 24-episode animated adventure aimed at kids between 6 and 11 years old. Which it sounds about right for a Sonic cartoon, to be honest.
It does. Honestly, some of the animated content that are like, aimed for for kids, but like in the family tab where old people can watch them. Some of that is really good. Dragon Prince is fantastic. The Del Toro one that I'm completely blanking on the name on is wonderful. Troll Hunters, that's it. So they've got a history of kind of being quite good in this ballpark. So I mean, maybe Sonic can finally get a reasonable adaptation.
Yeah, there you go. That's Sonic. Out of the big dramas now. First up, George Clooney is going to executive produce a TV reboot of Buck Rogers, an old sci-fi property. So
is he starring or just producing?
Well, no. Apparently, he's lined up to star. It's not. I mean, this is the thing, and all in the done deal yet. But the other interesting thing here is that Brian K. Vaughan is going to write it. You don't have an opinion on his TV work, though. I know you don't like his comic books, but he did episodes of Lost, I'm sure. Yeah. So.
Well, maybe I've seen other stuff of his, and I just know I didn't know, and now I know why I didn't like it.
But that he's a fantastic comic book writer. He's one of the best comic book writers working today. As much as Cars could disagree with me, he's way better than your favorite. All right, so shut up.
To be honest, I don't even have like a really strong dislike of him. It's more just indifference. It's not like some of the other writers where I'm like, no, I will never touch their stuff.
Yeah, but if you want to upset Car, just put Brian K. Vaughan is better than Kieran Gillen in the comments.
It's fine, because I know that none of you mean it and you're only saying it because Pete's telling you to. And that's fine, won't hurt.
So yeah. Based on a character created by Philip Francis Nolan in 1928, which was later turned into a TV show, Buck Rogers in the 25th Century for NBC. The show ran for 2 seasons from 1979. So this is a really classic property. It's centered around Captain William Anthony Buck Rogers, played by Gil Gerard, a pilot whose spacecraft malfunctions and Rogers is accidentally frozen for over 500 years and transported into a world where Earth was rebuilt following a nuclear war. So obviously, you look at the photos from the old show, it's an ancient show, so it looks all goofy and campy and whatnot. And I'm not saying it should be as gritty as Battlestar Galactica, but if you think of Battlestar Galactica and sort of taking a campier old show and then saying, hey, here's the modern version of it, that could be cool. Admittedly, the name Buck Rogers does sound kind of goofy on its own, so maybe they'll call it something else. That said, though, George Clooney can be a pretty fun swashbuckly guy if given the opportunity, I think. So maybe they do want to have a sort of tongue-in-cheek tone to this. I don't know.
I think they probably keep the name. That's the biggest part of their brand recognition. But I think you can still do a modern take on it. Not to make it ultra gritty, but less cheesy. Sure. I'm thinking you mentioned Battlestar Galactica. I think is maybe a better comparison might be Lost in Space.
Okay, sure, yeah.
Which took that goofy 60s sci-fi and kind of went, okay, this is what this is like now, where it's still fun, it's still like not gritty, but we're just doing it in the what we expect of that now.
Yeah. So that's Buck Rogers being produced and potentially starring George Clooney, written by Brian K. Vaughan. And I love Brian K. Vaughan's comics, so that name excites me as much as it doesn't Connor. So moving on, Tim Robbins is going to star opposite Leslie Mann in The Power, Amazon's 10-episode thriller drama series based on Naomi Alderman's feminist sci-fi book. Coming from director Reed Morano, who worked on Sister Alderman. So the world of Power is our world, but for one twist of nature. Suddenly and without warning, all teenage girls in the world develop power to electrocute people at will. It's hereditary, it's inbuilt, and it can't be taken away from them. The Power follows a cast of remarkable characters from London to Seattle, Nigeria to Moldova, as the power evolves from a tingle in teenagers' collarbones to a complete reversal of the power balance of the world.
This sounds expensive with all those countries.
You get a couple of establishing shots for your first season, then you just use them forever. It's fine.
I'm thinking of oh god, what was the earlier Netflix show that had this problem?
Sense8.
Yeah,
but you don't have to actually shoot in all those countries. They just want it to be fancy and expensive.
Yeah, then Netflix is like, damn it, why did we agree to this?
Yes, this is costing 5 times what it should have cost.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I like Tim Robbins. The concept sounds interesting. It sounds like you could do a lot of interesting commentary by having all of a sudden every woman on the planet has this superpower. And how does that balance of power, going along with the idea that it is a male-dominated world and we're still struggling to find true equality, and all of a sudden the half that is in the more what's the word I'm looking for, marginalized is able to suddenly electrocute the men.
What's really interesting to me is that, because I don't know exactly the timeline of when this is set, because it mentions it's hereditary and there's a shift. I would hope there are still people around from before the first generation where they're adult women. It didn't kick in when they were teenagers and it's their kids. So you've got this kind of maybe resentment, weird kind of power dynamic of the older women without powers. That'd be really interesting.
Yeah, maybe. I was thinking maybe we'll have 2 timelines. Maybe we'll have like just after it hit, but we'll have also the world like 20 years later or something like that, when everyone's kind of used to the idea. I think, I don't know if it's important to me, because I mean, who knows? Maybe all the women at all ages get this at the same time.
It could be. It sounded like it's a teenage kick-in thing, though, rather than...
I think what I'm more interested in, though, is having a lot of men who are around before this happened, and their kind of reaction and their quest to maintain power, and almost the X-Men like fears of like, they've got too much power now, we have to do something about this.
The younger boys who have only read about the days where things weren't like this, and there's interesting things.
There's a lot of potential. I have no idea if the book's any good, but I mean, it certainly sounds interesting. So, and Tim Robbins and Leslie Mann are an interesting couple of actors to put in there. So, I'm
intrigued.
And Rainn Wilson's in here too. He was already cast. I actually didn't even mention that.
Oh, okay.
So Rainn Wilson's in there too. So yeah, he was cast in this last February. So this has been gestating a little bit.
Did we talk about this last February? I don't remember ever.
If we did, I've completely forgotten about it.
Yeah, well, that's all right then. As long as it's not just me this time.
So moving on, Nicole Kidman is going to star and executive produce for a show called Hope for Amazon Studios. So another Amazon thing in the works. Nicole Kidman, she's loving these limited series now. She's doing a lot of these prestige limited series. Done a couple at HBO. Now she's working with Amazon. So this is under her Blossom Films production company. So yes, it's based on a Norwegian film. It was Norway's entry in the international film category at the Academy Awards, or the upcoming Academy Awards. Their entry. That doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be nominated, but it's their submission for it. Because obviously we've not had nominations yet. I don't even know when they're happening, because the whole thing's later than usual this year, so I don't know when they're doing that. But with suspense, mystery, tragedy, and humor, the series Hope will chronicle 12 days of a family's Christmas together, the unraveling of a marriage with 6 children between them, in this large, complicated, blended family drama. Hope is a falling in love again story. Descriptions, I love that word blended now. They love to put in the word blended. It sounds like the sort of thing where you got good writing, you got good actors, it might be compelling, but it's this condensed story of a family falling apart over Christmas. It would be interesting if they did something bold, because obviously we like the shows being weekly, but it'd be interesting if they did something like this where they actually released this one a day around Christmas in like a year or two, because that's how it's set.
Okay, I'll be honest with you. My internet, whatever, dropped out while you were telling the description. I heard none of it. I heard it was based on something Norwegian, so I've got nothing to add to this one. Sorry.
Let's move on. Apple TV has ordered a limited series called We Crashed, starring Jared Leto and Anne Hathaway. Anne Hathaway is completely fine, but Jared Leto means I am hard out before I've even read anything else. So, yeah, they're also going to be the lead roles. Apple Studios producing, which isn't really saying much, honestly. The series, I'm looking for the description here. I don't know if they've got a in-depth thing. It's based on the hit podcast. How dare you? It's a hit television show. There's no hit podcast. Unless it's our podcast, in which case, fine, I'll
I
accept
was going to say, that's
Yes.
very negative.
But the podcast is called We Crashed, The Rise and Fall of WeWork. And We Crashed is all one word, but the C's capitalized and crashed. And WeWork is kind of the same thing. It's one word.
I hate this name. I mean, it's probably really good for search engine, but I hate it.
Yeah. It's going to follow the greed-filled rise and inevitable fall of WeWork, one of the world's most valuable startups and narcissists whose chaotic love made it all possible. I don't know. I can see Jared Leto in that role, quite frankly. Jared Leto.
Unfortunately, he's a weird, terrible person by the sounds of it.
It's a narcissist? You don't say. You don't say. All right. Moving on. FX has ordered a pilot. It's called The Spook Who Sat by the Door. The executive produced by Lee Daniels, written by Foundation and Raising Dion co-executive producer Lee Dana Jackson, and will be directed by The Twilight Zone and The First Purge director Gerard McMurray. So, based on Sam Greenlee's spy novel, the series will look at the fictional story of Dan Freeman, the first African-American CIA officer hired by the agency in the late 1960s. It chronicles the quest of Freeman, who was recruited as part of an affirmative action program. After a very competitive selection process, he trains in high-level combat and espionage. However, following the arduous training, this model recruit is rewarded with the post in the reprographics, aka photocopying. I'm glad they told me what that was, because I had no idea what reprographics was.
I couldn't have even made a guess.
Yes. I mean, that's obviously clearly the joke, is that it's sounding fancy and it says, aka he's doing photocopying. He's got a shit job. So, Left by the Door is a token of the CIA's racial equality, in quotations, their racial equality. So, okay, a lot to work with there. A lot of drama and social commentary to throw in there. Presumably, I would imagine he somehow gets involved in a real case and actually gets to do something.
Has to, yeah.
I assume that's what it's going to be him proving himself and getting away from the photocopier. I assume is
them presumably not taking him seriously even when he's right. Yeah.
So interesting concept. It feels like FX is a not bad home for this. They can be a bit edgier, but they can tackle the subjects without sugarcoating things too much. So that's The Spook Who Sat by the Door.
It's a good title.
So next up, so Michael B. Jordan's got a show in the works at Amazon, which is not a surprise because he did like an Amazon Prime TV spot. Apparently, I haven't seen it, but it was one of the most watched Super Bowl spots.
I'll tell you what.
Him. But he's doing a Muhammad Ali TV show with his production company. They've got a big first look deal with Amazon, and they're working with Muhammad Ali's estate to do a limited series based on his life. And that's basically it. that's the gist.
I mean, sure, not very surprising. It's easy pickings, I guess, when it comes to biographies.
Yes, for anyone who doesn't know, of course, Muhammad Ali was, of course, a really, really big figure skater back in his day.
You done? You done being funny?
If I have made one person even for a split second think that Muhammad Ali was a figure skater, I've achieved something today. But yes,
I'm very glad that you have definitely not achieved something today.
All right. Next up, something that I know we're not really fussed about, but you know how Paramount have or the Paramount channel, their network, right? They've kind of stepped away from stuff now because I know there's going to be I remember this being they're switching to just TV movie content. But they had their one big success. At least if I'm thinking of the same network. The one big success was Yellowstone, starring Kevin Costner.
Oh, aye, sure.
Right. Paramount Plus is working on a Yellowstone prequel called Y 1883. As in the letter Y, obviously, for Yellowstone.
Even they know you can't just call something Y.
To be fair, it sounds like FX has changed it to Why Last Man again. I can't even remember the last time they called it just Why.
I agree, but I couldn't resist.
So yeah, Yellowstone co-creator, executive producer Taylor Sheridan has signed a massive new overall deal with Viacom CBS to produce shows, and they're starting with Yellowstone prequel 1883 for Paramount Plus. So according to the sources, the deal's going to be for 5 years. Blah 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 blah. Is there anything about the show this specifically that we can talk about? Yes. So it's set to premiere later this year. Oh, so they're getting to this quite quickly. Y1883 follows the Dutton family as they embark on a journey west to the Great Plains towards the last bastion of untamed America. It is a stark retelling of the Western expansion and an intense study of one family fleeing poverty to seek a better future in America's promised land, Montana. What's funny about this is that this feels like it'll avoid the pitfalls of prequel stuff because it's just a story about the great expansion and like going out west, rather than like I can't imagine there's going to be references to the characters from present day Yellowstone. Like,
no, maybe not characters, but it'll be like, hey, look at the place.
I mean, maybe there'll be a little of that, but this could just be called something else. This doesn't even have to be connected to Yellowstone. They're just doing it for the
There's a weird
marketing
thing where I think they've chosen such an awkward middle ground that is just going to hurt it, because I don't think why and then the year tells people really that this is connected to Yellowstone without knowing. So I don't think you're drawing in people who don't know. So you might as well have just called it something else entirely.
What, Yellowstone?
1883
maybe?
Well, no, that's my point. You go either direction. I think either just put Yellowstone in the title, it's fine, and go, okay, this is what this is, or take the Y out completely and just have it, a different title entirely that doesn't have any connection to Yellowstone, and just tell people it's a prequel.
If it becomes a thing where this is successful enough that they do another, like, we'll do something set in like the 30s, and it's set in the same town again with different characters. Like, it could become almost a Fargo West thing where they keep doing different time periods. So it could almost become a thing where we do actually avenge, or at least people who like the show come to accept that. Oh, now it's it's why 1923. It's why.
No, I get that, but I'm thinking like people who are casual fans now who liked Yellowstone and would be interested in a prequel. If they if they're not told explicitly this is a prequel, this is connected to that thing you like, I don't think any of them have any clue based on this title. So why bother? It just seems like such a strange decision to me. All
right, moving on. Idris Elba's UK production firm Green Door Pictures has acquired the TV rights to poet Selena Godin's well-received debut novel Mrs. Death, Mrs. Death. Now, just to explain this title, Mrs. Death, as in a name, as in
the title.
That's the title, yes. So the woman's name is Mrs. Death, and then the second part of it is Mrs. Death, as in she is missing death. So Mrs. Death, Mrs. Death. So it makes sense when you're reading it. Obviously, when I say it like that, it sounds a bit silly, but it's a good title though because it looks good.
And the awkwardness of the English language, that where you just explained that right now.
Mm-hmm.
You said she is missing death, as in, is absent, and she,
yes.
And she's longing for it. But also, it could be she misses death, as in she avoids death,
yes.
and they've just. So yeah. Isn't English such a wonderful language?
So it's a dark comedy. It was published in the UK by Canongate. The fictional story of a young author named Wolf who is visited by death, a shape-shifting working class black woman. Exhausted from spending eternity doing her job, Death seeks someone to unburden her conscience, and asks Wolf to write her memoirs. Enthralled by her reminiscences of Wolf and Death time travel together to witness historic events of the past and the present. Past and the present. That's a Screams After Midnight thing, but past and the present.
I don't drink for that one.
As the two reflect on ancestry, loss, and the future of humanity, their friendship grows into a surprising affirmation of hope and resilience. So, very, very sounds like a very. I don't want to say ethereal, but the time traveling, looking at different eras, and I imagine the dark comedy is going to have a lot of social commentary and stuff in it. And
it almost sounded like a Christmas Carol.
Kind of, but sort of more ongoing, where the writer's not in trouble or like being shown stuff for a reason. It's more that it's actually Death who wants him to write a book, her memoirs. Yes. So it becomes this kind of comical look at the history of the world. But I assume this is a limited series. I mean, I suppose you could do it for ongoing. You could just keep visiting more times and places.
I mean, you probably could, yeah.
But yeah, so Elba's producing. Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting premise. It's a good title as well.
Yeah, I'm intrigued by that one. I think, like I say, it's a memorable title for sure.
Yeah, Mrs. Death. You'll never forget it. Next up, Stars is ordered an 8-part drama about Catherine de Medici. I assume that's pronounced. So yes, the cable's ordered. The show's called The Serpent Queen. Based on Leone Frida's book, Catherine de Medici, Renaissance Queen of France. I don't know my Queens of France well enough to know if I'm pronouncing her name properly, but
Medici, yeah. Italian family? I think.
It says Italian. I'd say that name's Italian if I'm looking at it, but
from memory, yeah, Italian family.
So yes, Stacey Passion, who's directed Billions and directed episodes of American Gods, and Dickinson will direct multiple episodes, including the premiere. So that's kind of the main director. They've got to set up the style.
Sure.
Maybe it gives you an idea of kind of maybe some of the feeling and tone they're going for with this as well. So Medici was an Italian noblewoman and queen and consort of France, married to King Henry II and mother of kings Francis II, Charles IX, and Henry III. Man, those Roman numerals could get out of hand if they kept going with those. Ninth, Charles the Ninth. Like, at what point do you just come on? It's enough. Charles the 22nd.
Yeah, but they shorten down again because 10 goes back to just an X, right? So it's like it never really gets any longer than that 9 until you're like in the hundreds.
Well, that's not true. 8 has like 4 digits.
Sure, I think 8 rather than 9. But what I meant is like once you're in that first 10 period, that's as long as it gets, really.
Aye, but you can get to the 4 though quite easily. Every so often, you'll get to the 4 digits, which is quite a long number to add at the end of your name.
I mean, sure.
I don't know. Anyway. She had a huge influence in France during the 16th century. Yeah, I can already pretty much tell you this is probably not for me. I'm almost just falling asleep telling you about it.
It's something I would probably enjoy on a passing level, depending on how accurate it is.
Yes. Next up, Seth MacFarlane is teaming up with Amy Pascal to adapt Ilan Mastai's novel All Are Wrong Todays for Peacock. We're getting a Peacock original here. So, published in 2018, the book is a mind-bending time travel love story that explores alternate versions of ourselves in dramatically surprising and often unexpected ways. It tells the story of Tom Barron's world set in 2016, where technology has solved all of humanity's problems. There's no war, no poverty, no underripe avocados. Okay, try to be funny. Unfortunately...
You laughed.
Well, yeah, because of the way I read it to myself. I think trying to be funny, is my reaction to most of Seth MacFarlane's work. Unfortunately, Tom isn't happy. He lost the girl of his dreams, and what do you do when you're heartbroken and have a time machine? Something stupid. Finding himself stranded in a terrible alternate reality, Tom is desperate to fix his mistake and go home. Right up until the moment he discovers wonderfully unexpected versions of his family, his career, and the woman who just might be the love of his life. Now Tom faces the impossible choice: go back to his perfect but loveless life, or stay in our messy reality with his soulmate by his side. His search for the answer takes him across continents and timelines in a quest to figure out, finally, who he really is and what his future is supposed to be. So, this is a perfect world with no problems, but do you give all that up because the person you love is in our shitty version of the planet?
I'm almost annoyed that it said our reality, because up to that point I hadn't, and I was like, I was waiting to pause and be like, right, money on the shitty version being just our world.
No, it is. Of course, that's the premise. It has to be a premise.
Yeah.
Especially set in 2016. All the things that started happening in 2016 specifically. Come on.
It was a big year, yeah.
I hate that sounds so... hopefully MacFarlane's not as involved.
I like a lot of his stuff, so I'm okay if he is. I think he's a very talented man.
A Million Ways to Die in the West soured me so much on him.
Yeah, I'm not going to defend that one.
That I just
I'm not saying everything he's ever done is great. There is a lot of good stuff.
Yes. Very glamorous shot of Amy Adams at the top of this next article. She's over her shoulder. There's light hitting there. She's smiling. I mean, what can I say? Every so often, a ginger can actually look good. Is all I'm saying here, right? That's all I'm saying. All right. So, Amy Adams, with her company Bond Group in A24, developing Outlawed for TV. So this is a feminist western. The book published on January 5th, 2021. This is happening so often now, where books have literally just came out or are not even out yet, and the deals are in place.
I know someone who works for one of these companies that does this, where they are sent the pre-release copies to the department. They'll sit there, there's a team of however many, depending on the size of the company, and they just sit there, read the books, put them in a pile, going, yeah, we think this is worth considering or not, and just pass it up the chain. So yeah, it doesn't surprise me at all.
It says Outlawed follows a young midwife through her initiation into the notorious Hole in the Wall gang and their dangerous mission to transform the Wild West. Honestly, I think saying feminist western actually is a very interesting clash of two words. I'm into it.
Yeah, I am too, because that technically expanded description you gave me there at the end was there was nothing to go on there. But you'd already said, feminist western. That's enough. Where I'm like, okay, I'm interested or I'm not, which I am.
To an extent, I think Godless kind of went into that territory a bit. The whole town, the shootout towards the end was very much about all the women having to sort of stand up and fight back.
Yeah,
and it was
I wouldn't describe the show as a feminist western, but I would say it is a western with
the feeling
modern
I had
feminist sensibilities.
Yeah, the feeling I had though when all that stuff was going on in that show is what I want from this essentially. If they give me a badass character, I mean not even badass to begin with, but someone who kind of grows into being a badass perhaps, because that's maybe kind of the part of the point.
Westerns are cool again apparently.
They could be good. They could be good when done properly, when they're cinematic enough.
I think there's been a handful of decent westerns over the last few years, so I'm down for this. Yeah,
it's been met with effusive praise since its debut of the book. And it's been on multiple most anticipated of 2021 lists. It's been named in Amazon's Best of the Month, Library Read section, Indie Next Pick, all these things. Some of these things I've never even heard of.
The usual, here's your list of accolades.
Yes. All the book club or book sites that recommend things, they've all been putting it high. So, cool. Interesting. I don't think it says anything about Amy Adams herself necessarily being starring in it. It doesn't say she's not going to either, though. She seems like it depends if the characters might be young, like a young, just like out of her teens kind of age, then fair enough. But I think Amy Adams, I could see her in a western.
Me too. And obviously we've seen in the last few years she's willing to do TV work, at least premium TV.
Sure. Yeah. I think it'd be a fun role for Amy Adams to do actually. So, but again, if the characters might be like 22 because she's quite young, and fair enough. But
don't change it that much, obviously.
But yeah, I mean, it does say young midwife, so yeah, maybe Amy's just a bit out of that range at this point. But
she can be the badass mentor.
Maybe.
It's always one of those.
Yeah, because young midwife says to me she's going to be about 20 probably. But hey-ho. So that is Outlawed. Next up, HBO are developing a memoir. It's called the Fact of a Body. This is Alex Marzano Lazavinci's memoir.
A lot of Italian today.
Yeah. So yes, who is this sumbitch? So it's centered around a young lawyer whose opposition to the death penalty is shaken when she's assigned the case of a child murderer whose complicated life story parallels the long suppressed trauma of her past.
That's convenient.
This is the sort of thing that I'd sort of roll my eyes a little bit at, except for the fact that it's a memoir, so it's a true story.
Yeah.
So the idea that someone
sounds very TV.
It does, but the idea that someone who's really against the death penalty is so disturbed by like a killer that they kind of maybe second guess their opinion a
I
little
think,
bit.
like, up till that point, I'm like, okay, this seems perfectly normal and plausible, right? That seems like I can buy that. It's the part where it parallels their own experiences so neatly.
Yeah.
That's the bit where I go, okay, now it sounds like a TV thing.
Yeah, there's a bit more here. I'll expand it here. It tells the story of Ricky Langley, a paedophile and child murderer in Louisiana who killed and lately molested a 6-year-old boy in 1992. And Marzano Lozenvich, who was a 25-year-old intern at the law firm that defended Langley, wanted Langley to die after watching his videotape confession despite being staunchly anti-death penalty. So, interesting as well that they're working for the defense, or the law firm working on his defense. Makes it a bit more interesting as well, perhaps. So it was a solid limited series that HBO could put a lot of money into, and some good actors could.
You say a lot of money, enough money that it'll have that HBO sheen, but by its nature doesn't need to go overboard, right?
Oh yeah, it's not a big sci-fi show or action show where there's a lot of effects or anything like that. Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Moving on, Apple TV is nearing order for a 6-part limited series. It's called In with the Devil. Taron Egerton, or Edgerton, however you pronounce his goddamn name. I think I always said Edgerton, but then I think I was corrected.
It's that was out of the 3 ways you said it. That would be the one I'm certain it's not.
Yeah, I think Edgerton's actually the correct, but I was so used to saying it my way that whatever. Anyway,
Yeah.
so we got. Was that Robert Kirkman I'm seeing here in the image, or is it just an actor who looks like Robert Kirkman? It's a 6-hour adaptation of a true crime memoir by James Keane, and Edgerton is set to star as the author, and Richard Jules Paul Walter Hauser is in talks to join him as the suspected serial killer. So Michael R. Roscom will direct a script by Dennis Lehane. It'll shoot in New Orleans. So Keane was a young Chicago kid who was a standout football player headed for a pro career when a few turns in the wrong direction caught him a decade-long prison sentence with no chance for parole. The son of a Chicago cop was offered by the prosecutor who put him behind bars the chance to be sprung from prison and a chance to redeem himself. The stakes were high. Same prosecutor convicted a man named Larry Hall for abducting and killing a 15-year-old, just one of perhaps 19 other women he's killed. The killer could be released on appeal. Keane's task was to integrate himself with the murderer in prison and get him to confess to 2 murders. So basically a prisoner's offered a chance to get out by going undercover inside the prison to befriend this killer and get him to talk. So that's the premise.
It sounds fine.
Yeah, I guess that's just the act. It looks so much like Robert Kirkman, the comic book writer who did Evil Dead and not Evil Dead, sorry, Walking Dead. But that was a slip. Evil Dead's, well, I actually really like the Walking Dead comic book, but even as far as the TV show Walking Dead, Evil Dead's a way better thing.
Also, the upcoming Invincible show from Amazon.
That is also true. Also, Outcast, that was only had 2 seasons on Cinemax, I believe that was on. But yeah, so that's cool. And we're actually almost out of time. We've got a window to record this, so I'm just going to speed through these last few things a little bit. Next up, Jessica Rhodes and Shredda Global acquired David Hill's The Vapors for TV, and Alex Metcalf is going to write the adaptation. This was competitive, apparently. It's a 2020 book called The Vapors. Right. The Vapors tells the unknown story of Hot Springs, Arkansas, America's forgotten capital of vice, home to healing waters, dozens of churches, and America's original national park, as well as illegal gambling, countless backrooms and brothels, and some of the country's most bald-faced criminals. For decades, Hot Springs was a pocket of sin in the buckle of the Bible Belt. This is the story of gangsters gone good, believers gone bad, and the growth of Black Broadway, supported by a burgeoning African-American middle class in the center of the Jim Crow South. This is the sort of thing, this will entirely depend for me on writing and directing, because the premise itself, there's so many shows that want it to be set in this type of location, that want all these, like, you know, anti-hero characters and crime and stuff. It needs to be excellent, and if it's excellent, then great, I'll love it. But if it's anything less than that, I'll be bored by it.
Yeah, that's kind of where I am as well. Like the whole like big crime angle doesn't really interest me inherently. It has to be pretty standout to grab me.
Next up, Folktellers, excerpts from an unknown guidebook is getting TV adaptation from Peter Mohan, executive producer of Hulu's The Hardy Boys. So I say a young adult fantasy book, developing it. The excerpts of an unknown guidebook series tells the story of an unassuming teenager, Aaron Anderson, superhero name, got the alliteration,
I was just thinking that, yeah.
who has his world turned upside down as he learns that his destiny is to become a folkteller, a guardian and wielder of those essential stories that comprise the hopes, fears, and potential of humanity across all dimensions. Aaron and a group of friends find themselves on a desperate mission to protect those stories from the shadowy creatures whose goal is to snuff out all life and light wherever it may exist. And along the way, Aaron will be forced to overcome his crippling lack of confidence and trust himself to use the primal power of those stories to fight back the darkness and bring order to the universe.
The non-young adult version of this, which is presumably written by Grant Morrison, I love. This take on this concept, yeah, okay. I'm skeptical.
Next up, Amazon Prime is pulling the curtain back on a new German original. They've ordered another German original series for Amazon Prime. It's called The Griffin. It's an adaptation of a novel, The Griffin. Wait, what?
It's a good start.
Oh, sorry, I got confused there. I'm trying to rush through this a little bit too much, and I'm confusing myself. Yeah, anyway. So yeah, there's a fantasy series called The Griffin, based on a book by Wolfgang Holbein. Very German name there. Love it. Here's the logline for it. On their way to adulthood, the three outsiders Mark, Mimo, and Becky come into contact with a fantastic world called the Black Tower. There, the Griffin, a world-devouring monster, has been mercilessly plundering and subjugating all living creatures for centuries, and the three friends of all people seem destined to end his reign of terror. So German original. Worth mentioning, this is being produced by one of the producers of Dark, just to give it a bit of credit.
Okay. I was interested in that until it said destined, and then it became a lot more generic.
And then another drama, also German, is called Luden, a 6-part series on the pimps who controlled the red light district in Hamburg at the end of the 1970s. So this is German, the Deuce.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Yeah, we can move on.
It centers on the rise of Sonny Boy Klaus Barkowski, who is... Barkowski does not sound German. Klaus does. Barkowski sounds something...
Polish,
yeah.
presumably.
Who is made into a pimp by the tough prostitute... But a prostitute turns him into a pimp? That's actually quite interesting, so, to be honest.
There's a bit of a reversal there, yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's basically it. Anyway, so... I've got a stream with Tim coming up in like 5 minutes, which is why I'm rushing through this a little bit. There's 3 more to do, so speed.
Well, let's go then.
Amazon orders TV adaptation of Jenny Han's young adult novel, the series The Summer I Turned Prey. You watch young adult? I'm just moving on. Young adult. I see the YA. We're moving on. Renée Zellweger is set to headline an NBC show, although it's a miniseries, 6-episode mini. So it's NBC kind of doing a prestige miniseries with a big actor. Kind of. It's called The Thing About Pam. Well, she fell in love with Jim. They got married in season 7. The end. What
we haven't got time for your stupid jokes.
So yes, based on a true crime phenomenon, the real life, stranger than fiction story behind the 2011 murder of Betsy Faria, that was featured on the Dateline NBC. The Thing About Pam is a collaboration of Blumhouse TV. Blumhouse. That's an interesting thing to put in there. So, yeah, written by Jessica Borziski, who will serve as showrunner. The Thing About Pam is based on the murder of Betsy Faria, which resulted in her husband Russ' conviction. He always insisted that he did not kill her, and his conviction was later overturned as the brutal crime set off a chain of events that would expose the diabolical scheme deeply involving Pam Hupp, a role that will be played by Zellweger. So, I don't know anything about this real story, but it sounds like if it was overturned, presumably she was into a lot of weird shit that the husband didn't know about, which got her dead, and he was blamed for it as the typical, husband murdered the wife assumption.
Quite possibly, yeah.
Which happens enough that I get why, the thought was had, but still.
Sure, yeah. I mean, as soon as it's described, it's true crime. I kind of checked that a little bit because as a genre, that's kind of pretty down on my list of favorites to participate in.
Yes. I'm just messaging Tim, who's messaged me already. Just wrapping up. Right.
We'd wrap up quicker if you just ignored him for 2 minutes.
No. Fail story. Fox, when our network show. Red Widow. It has nothing to do with Black Widow as far as I know. But we'll find out. It's a CIA drama. So, 1 hour CIA thriller based on Alma Katsu's forthcoming book, which Sarah Condon is executive producing. In Red Widow, the lives of 2 female CIA agents becomes intertwined around an internal threat to the agency's Russian division as they navigate the mostly male world of intelligence. Oh my god, this sounds so boring. All these words are so boring.
You are just hitting me with buzzwords.
Intertwined, internal threat, agency, intelligence. There's just so many words that just make it sound so bland. The novel captures the kind of thorny, manipulative, behind-the-scenes machinations that take place inside intelligence headquarters that only a true insider would know.
So it's a spy show.
Could this sound any more dull? Is it possible?
That didn't even sound particularly dull. It just sounded a really pretentious way of saying, yeah, it's a spy show.
Yes.
Which is fine. It might be fun. It might be fun. Spy shows can be good.
Now, the author of the book, for the record, which is maybe the interesting part here potentially, is a former NSA and CIA senior intelligence analyst. So she has
so it's got
knowledge.
Some authenticity coming to it.
So it may actually be relatively realistic to start with. I assume Fox will want to be more exciting as it goes, and they'll maybe fluff it up a bit. But
yeah,
there you go.
Little Fox out.
But there you go. We have to wrap up because Tim's waiting for me. I've got a stream to do. This is a 2-hour news episode because there was so much goddamn stuff. But yes, thank you very much for joining us. Let us know what you thought of these stories and the thing. Look out for my solo reviews of WandaVision that are still going up. You can also find me and Carr still working through the Queen's Gambit. Episode 4 of that will either already be up or just about to go up, depending on what goes up first between this and that. And also, The Expanse just finished. We had a big season finale of that last week, so that was cool. And if you're a $10 or more patron, make sure you go and vote in the pilot program vote, which ends on the 10th. The deadline for that vote is the 10th. There's 3 pilots. You get a first and second choice, and that'll dictate a pilot we'll try. And Queen's Gambit was one such pilot, which we liked enough that we kept doing, so that could happen again, potentially. It may happen, might not. We'll see. But that is pretty much us. Please do like and subscribe. We mentioned Patreon earlier, patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. And of course, catch us on Twitter at mailed_fuzz for channel updates. So thank you very much once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching TV. Have you got any vanilla?